Hello everyone. Welcome to Bibispice Talkshow. And yes, here is the first episode for Father's Day special, right? Um, and here is a girl, Bibi, right? And yeah. So today we're just going to talk about fathers, really, right? Fathers, and just them being celebrated, the fact that yes, they are leaders, right? So and also their fathers, their husbands, right? So they have so many responsibilities. So I've got two guests here with me today, right? So they're to help with this, right? To share more light and help other people out there, other fathers out there, or other people that are aspiring to be fathers or want to know who a father or a husband or a leader should be, right? So they're here to share more light. So yeah, I've got David with me, David Gregory, right? Who is an international speaker, a best-selling author, right? So he's an author of 11 books, right? So far, right? And most of them are kind of like fictional books, right? And the fictional books focus on Christ, on connecting Christ and fiction together, right? So I'm very interested. I've not read yet, so I'm looking forward to reading this book. And there's one that is a recent book of his, and it's titled One of Us.
Something that has to be done.
Kindly, yeah, look for it and purchase it, right? And yeah, and I believe you're going to enjoy it very well. So he's a best-selling author, right? And in New York Times, right? And I've also got Steve Camlin, right? And he is a vision man, like you said. So he has he's a public speaker as well. He's an author, right? And he's a leader so he has a mastery leaderboard that he uses to kind of help struggling entrepreneurs, right? And to kind of know how to cope and how to get out of their struggles, right? And he has a very lovely story about himself that is always willing to share, right? And I know that during this episode you'll be able to kind of listen to a little bit about the story, right? It's very unique, right? So please listen to this gentleman, right? Thank you so much. Take us back to the beginning, right? What inspired you to write that first novel, and what was the initial hope for it before it landed in Random House as a sign? Yeah.
Well, yeah. The first book I wrote was actually nonfiction. It was a Christian living book that I co-authored with a former pastor from Kentucky. And his material I thought was so good that I approached him and said, "Hey, I'd love to take your material and put it into book form." And so I put it together. And once that was done, there were some groups around the country that, small groups, very small groups that had really taken to him and to how he presented aspects of the gospel. And so I just got a hold of those groups and called them or emailed them or whatever, and just said, "Hey, want to let you know that Dan Stone has a book out," because they enjoyed his teaching so much. And it ended up selling. That was about all I did to market it. That was about it. It ended up selling 100,000 copies just by word of mouth. And I didn't know what would happen with it. I thought, well, maybe we'll sell 1,000 copies and we'll just call it even. And so it was amazing to see what God did with that in people's lives. I was just at a conference in Dallas about 6 weeks ago, and there was more than one person who came up to me and said, the book is called The Rest of the Gospel. There was more than one person who came up to me and said, if I were stranded on a desert island, the two books I would want with me would be the Bible and the rest of the Gospel. So in any case, that was my first foray into writing. And then when I was at Dallas Theological Seminary, my last semester there, I started a fiction novella, about 100-page novel. And really, I just wanted, it was a little story about a guy from Cincinnati, a guy in his mid to late 30s, a skeptic and agnostic who receives a dinner invitation to dine at a nice Italian restaurant with Jesus of Nazareth. And so he figures some friends from work are probably playing a prank on him, and but he decides to go anyway because if nothing else, he'll get a nice Italian meal out of it. He likes this place. And so he goes on the invited night, and he is seated with this guy who claims to be Jesus. And he discovers in the course of this 2-hour meal that this really is Jesus. And so it's kind of it's kind of the classic, who would you want to have dinner with if you could, 1, 2, or 3 people from history. So this guy was having dinner with Jesus, and so that's why I called it Dinner with a Perfect Stranger. And so I did the same thing. I self-published it. I had some copies sitting in my garage. I just thought, hey, I've got this resource to give to family, friends, people I meet, to share the gospel in a way that hopefully would be engaging and entertaining and enlightening. And but I had a contact at Random House, and I sent them a copy of the book, and they got a hold of me and said, we want to publish your book. And so it's like, well, great, okay. So they were going to run a 20,000 copy print run, which for an unknown author was a lot. And so I it's like, sure. So I signed a contract. Well, as it turned out, before the book was printed, before the book was released, they had printed 200,000 copies. And so they launched this huge marketing campaign. It had its own write-up in USA Today and the Wall Street Journal and who knows what. And it was released in August of 2005, and within 5 or 6 weeks, it hit the New York Times bestseller list. And so it sold about 500,000 copies, and all of a sudden I had a fiction career that was dumped in my lap, because you could bet that Random House wanted me to write more books, which I never intended to do. And so all of this was a complete shock to me. I had an independent film producer, before Random House even published it, contact me from Louisville and say he had gotten a hold of my self-published version. A friend had given it to him. And he called me and said, I want to make a movie of your book. And wow. So we met as he was flying through Dallas, and I signed a contract with him. He made a movie. It sold tons of DVDs. It aired endless number of times on a major Christian cable network. Still does. I ended up writing 2 sequels. He ended up making movies of both, and so the whole thing just mushroomed into this, into this reaching millions of people with the message that I had just hoped to give out to some family and friends. And so, I've had so many kind of bizarre experiences of, it was about 2 years ago, I was on an airplane, and these 2 guys were talking in front of me, and so I leaned forward at some point, and what they were talking about their business, and I was kind of interested. So I said, "What do you guys do?" And so we chatted, and so the guy finally, one of them said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm an author." He said, "What do you write?" And I said, "Well, my best known book is this little book called Dinner with a Perfect Stranger." And he just looked at me incredulously, and he said, God used that book to help bring me to faith in Christ. He was a Jewish guy. And so we got to be friends, and we still communicate. And I got an email a while back from, actually, the filmmaker got an email, and he forwarded it to me, from a woman in Japan that was using the Perfect Stranger movies to share the gospel with people in Japan. And she had translated the whole thing and had the, had the subtitles in Japanese and all of this. And it's like, well, it's needless to say, that was way beyond my vision for all of this. So it's been quite a thrilling ride.
Oh, it's lovely. So, you mentioned about this books being in audio, right, version, right? So, is it just one of them or all of them?
Well, all of the books that I've written that have been published by traditional publishers are on audio. And so about half my books have been published by traditional publishers, and about half of them I self-published. One or two of them was on audio. And the latest one, I just came out with a book late last year called One of Us. And it should actually be on audio within about a week. And so I personally have become a big fan of audiobooks. And so I know that a lot of people are huge fans of audiobooks, and they'll listen to a book that they might not sit down and read a hard copy of. And so increasingly I seem to be that way. And I'm a big proponent of getting everything that I have written into audio form.
Oh, okay, thanks for that. So, Stephen, right? So your story is very unforgettable, right? So, golf balls in a thunderstorm and all, right? Can you take us back to that moment and what led you there emotionally and spiritually?
Yeah, that was in August of 2003, and at the time, it was in that short window where I had walked away from my radio career, my marriage had fallen apart, and at age 35, I had about $62,000 in debt because I was not paying attention to where my money was going, and I had to crawl home and live with family. And it was just the lowest point of my life. And also at the time, my self-talk, and this is something very big that I teach and help a lot of people with, my self-talk, I was very self-deprecating and did not realize the damage I was doing to myself by being that way. I could tear myself down and get laughs, so I thought it was working. Well, what it did was it kept me stuck for a number of years. So on a very hot and humid August afternoon, I had $3 left in my pocket, and I decided to take out my frustrations on a bucket of golf balls. And I am a horrible golfer. So I went to the local little mini golf place that had a little driving range, and I went to the farthest tee box against the plastic fence so I wouldn't dent anyone's car in the parking lot, because I am not a good golfer. And I just swung and hit them as hard as I could. And because I was at the edge of the property, there was a whole line of steel-towered power lines. So I was trying to hit the towers because it made a big loud bang like a gong going off. So I was aiming for them. Well, it was a hot and humid day. And what happens in New Hampshire on hot, humid August days? Well, a thunderstorm came through. So I had the wind and the rain and the thunder and the lightning, and there I stood barefoot in the wet grass, hitting my bucket of golf balls and the buckets of two guys who ran from the storm and never came back. So I swung for close to an hour just getting out my frustrations. And at one point, and I was not challenging God, I was challenging the storm. And some people have said, why were you mad at God? I said, I wasn't mad at God, I was mad at myself. And I held the club up in the air and I dared the lightning to hit me. Thinking, I'm not going to take myself up, but if you feel like it, go ahead. And I didn't get hit. I got soaked by the storm. And at the end of an hour, I picked up the 3 empty buckets and I brought them back. I could barely lift my arms. I got to my car and opened the door. And the rain stopped and the sun started to break through the clouds. And I just started laughing. I just thought that was funny. And I looked up and I just thought, well played.
Yeah.
And the next day, me and God, we're good. I talk to him every day, and every time I hear thunder, even now, I go, oh man, he's still laughing from that day. Well, the next day, David, I love your stories about how your intention, your original vision, and how it expanded. The very next day, I had just started working with a brand new life coach back then. And I was on a call with him, and he said, "Hey, how was your week?" And I said, "Put your pen down and listen to this." And as funny as I could make it sound, and it was really self-deprecating too, because I was poisoning myself back then with my own self-talk. I told him the story of that hour, and he was laughing so hard at the other end of the phone, which if you're listening to this show and you're a coach and your clients' lives stink, you really shouldn't laugh at them. They don't see the joke yet. And he said, "I have 2 questions to ask you. Are you this open, honest, and transparent about your life with just anybody?" And I said, "Yeah," usually self-deprecating, but yeah. And he asked, "Have you ever thought of being a motivational speaker or a stand-up comedian? I think you'd be really good at both." What he did not know was my 4 goals when I was 11. Radio DJ, stand-up comedian, author of my own books, teacher of people. He didn't know, but he saw that in me. And he asked me a question, and I answered it and thought, well, I've wanted to do both of those things, but I have no idea how to pursue it. On his desk, and again, David, signs from God, right? On his desk in his junk mail pile was a brochure for a local community college that 2 weeks later had a class called Intro to Stand-Up Comedy.
Oh, man.
And he read it off to me, and he said, "Will you go?" I said, "Yeah, give me the phone number." And I called, and I was there. And a week later, I went to my first Toastmasters meeting, and I learned how to become a speaker and craft my stories. And I wound up in Toastmasters for 8 years. I won some international speaking awards, drove 7.5 hours up into Canada to speak for 6.5 minutes, and drove home the next day with a trophy. That's also the day I learned, do not joke with the border guards. You will get your car searched, which I did. He said, "You going to bring anything back into the country?" I said, "Hopefully a trophy." He goes, "Sir, pull your car right over there and go in the building." So, golf balls in a thunderstorm literally changed my life. And as I put my life back together using the tools of humor and speaking and storytelling, I took a lot of notes, and that's how I learned everything that I teach now. I learned it the hard way. I never bought anybody's courses or books on how to do vision boards or visualization or manifestation. I got little tips and tactics and techniques from people here and there and made them my own, and have built now over the past 2+ decades this amazing existence. Now, life still happens to me like it happens to us all. The phoenix doesn't just rise out of the fire one time. I've got a whole stage story called Some Days Your Phoenix Rides a Pogo Stick. I've burnt my tail feathers off many times over, but I just keep growing them back and flying higher every time and taking notes every single day, which includes moments of gratitude every day. And in tomorrow morning's journal, gratitude journal, there's going to be a message about sharing this time with the 2 of you and the gift that it has been in my day.
Oh, it's really blessed, I know you guys are more experienced than I am, right? But man, like, it's inspiring. I would like to, aspire to what you guys are. Yeah, so it's really nice. Thanks for sharing, guys. So, David, I'll ask another question again. So, why do you believe that fiction is such a powerful vehicle for sharing the message of Christ?
Well, I really started writing fiction. Actually, while I was at seminary, I took a creative writing class one semester, and then I took a creativity class the next semester, and it was during that second class that this idea for this book, Dinner with a Perfect Stranger, came to mind. And originally I was thinking in nonfiction form, but I began thinking that I wanted to put what I wanted to put into nonfiction form. Well, had I done so, it might have been read by 100 people, and so I put it into fiction form because honestly, there are simply a huge number of people, maybe the majority of people, who will be interested in reading something or listening to an audiobook, a story that's entertaining and engaging, and that they learn something from, and that they can get emotionally invested in, who wouldn't ever think about picking up a 300-page theology book. And so, I mean, you know, you can go to this bookstore or go on Amazon and you know, order all the theology books you want to. I mean, they're out there, and some of them are great. But you know, it's people that are intensely interested in that kind of thing that are going to be the purchasers. And so I just saw it as a way to reach an audience that was totally different, and that and so really that's why I've continued to write fiction in this way, because even though honestly I am not really a fiction reader, the stories I consume are almost entirely movie form. I was a Michael Crichton fan. I loved several of his books. I remember reading The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which was a unrelentingly bleak and fascinating book. But honestly, you know, the number of novels I've read over the last 10 years, I could probably you know, name on one hand. But so it's a little unusual to be a fiction writer that doesn't read fiction. But I enjoy writing fiction, and it's simply it's a way to reach people that would never be reachable in another way. And honestly, through today's visual media, it's a way, if those stories were translated into movies or a streaming series or whatever, it's a way to reach far more people than the books would. And so the movies that have been made from the Perfect Stranger series have reached far more people than the Dinner with the Perfect Stranger reached, even though that book reached a lot of people. I wrote a full-length novel back in about 2010 called The Last Christian, and it actually is being shopped right now as a possible streaming series in Hollywood. And so I'd love for that to happen, simply because I recognize you know, the opportunity to reach people and influence people with that streaming series is far greater than the number of people who ever read The Last Christian. And so so that really, to me, it's an enjoyable thing to do, to craft a really well done story, but it also reaches an audience that I could never dream of reaching through nonfiction.
You know, sorry. I mean, thanks for that. Well, in terms of, like, you know, okay, let me you know, bombard you, because I'll come back to that. So, Steve, please. So let's talk legacy, right? How can fathers begin using visualization or your vision board mastery method to shape the future they want to build for themselves and their families?
I think the biggest first step is to create a vision for how they want their children to live their lives. Not just themselves, but how would you like your kids to grow up? What type of young men and young women would you like them to be? How would you like them to treat others? How would you like them to relate to the world around them? How would you like them to impact the world around them? And then you have to understand that children, and I heard a speaker say this the other day, I wish I could remember who said it. They're not taught, they're shown how to act. That you need to be the ultimate example of a behavior out there. I mean, there's that old phrase that says, do as I say, not as I do. That is, to me, a gigantic steaming pile of garbage on the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. You have got to be the living, breathing example. And I'm very fortunate that I had a dad who took the time to teach me and show me, and he was a good example of how to treat others and how to be an honest person, how to live with integrity within your core values, how to have really solid core values, what was most important in the world. And he set a good example for me that even now, 6.5 years after he's passed, I'll stop and I'll think, what would Dad have done in this situation? If I'm not quite sure, I'll say, well, Dad would have helped this person out. And it even goes back to one of my grandfather on my mom's side. Very simple lesson he lived his life by. He never verbalized it, but by actions every day. Leave as many situations as you can better than you find them. And that includes leaving people better than you can find them as well. So if you first start to create a vision of how you want your kids to be and impact the world, excellent. Then it's up to you to show them how to become that person.
Yeah, it's just like they admonish us to kind of pray that yes, we should have people that are representation of Christ, right, in our lives, and also we should be the representation of Christ in the lives of others as well, our family, our children, our wives, our husbands, our society, because you are the first contact. Because people see Christ as somebody you can. It's not somebody. It's that you can easily meet or you can talk to. So we are the representation of Christ. So if people cannot see who God is through you, then yeah, it's not good really. So it's good to be example as good father, good mother, and a good Christian. Yeah, I really like that. So thanks for that. So large copies that you first sold, right? So would you say that you got it because of your network, or because you just went to the right source?
Oh, I think it's a combination of everything. If you're putting yourself out there, you may think you have one certain audience, but then out of left field comes something else. When you're putting the best version of yourself out there, and this is very relatable also to what David's original vision was for his books, we never know where the ripples go. So I do my best to just put myself out there as openly and honestly as I can every day. I don't target a specific audience, but what I found that when I find that I make a really good connection out there and I represent myself personally and professionally to the best of my ability, I have found that all of a sudden people become the greatest connections for me. And it's amazing to see sometimes where a message will come from. I've made connections all around the world because somebody saw a post that I made on social media and started to follow me. And my family and I have a nonprofit. It started off as what I refer to as a hippie giving mission, just doing acts of kindness on a daily basis. Well, somebody said, Steve, we want to make a donation, but we can't because you're not an official nonprofit. My sister took on the project of becoming a nonprofit, and now we have this thing called Beach Bum Philanthropy, which is a 501c3, and we have made connections all around the world. People who reach out to me and say, Steve, I did a simple act of kindness for somebody today because I saw you post something about it. We've never met. I live 6,000 miles from you, but I wanted to let you know your message reached me today.
Super.
I love stuff like that. So it's, for me, I just put the ripples out every day. They go where they go, and when they come back, I love to get, kind of the verbal, spiritual postcards from however far they got and impacted somebody's life. And that just makes my day every time. And I'm very humbled and honored to do what I do the way that I do it.
Oh, bless. Oh, great. David, that question also goes to you.
Well, I was thinking about all that as it applies to me. I have found that in my own experience, all of my own efforts outside of the realm where I do things well have completely flopped. They have, all my efforts at book marketing, all my efforts at starting and running a book business on my own, that didn't entirely flop, but my efforts to promote my own material, by and large, have all failed. I have found in my own experience, and part of that goes with the territory of I'm the world's worst marketer. I mean, I'm just, nobody would accuse me of ever being, a quality marketer. And so I find that when I venture into areas that I don't have a passion for and that I don't do well, it doesn't work. Now, does that, sometimes I'm a little reluctant to say that, because it's like, well, does that mean your advice for people is to never spend time on something that they don't always want to be doing? It's like, well, no, that's not really how life works. But on the other hand, all the success of the material, of the things that I have put together, particularly the books that I've written, has really come out of the blue. I mean, my initial nonfiction selling 100,000 copies by word of mouth, totally out of the blue. Dinner with a Perfect Stranger, hitting the New York Times bestseller list. I had almost nothing to do with it, other than the fact that I wrote the book. And same with the movies. A movie producer calls me up and says, "I want to make movies of your books." Great, I'll sign the contract. What's going on in Hollywood right now with this novel of mine? I just literally last August, a guy from Hollywood just emailed me and said, "Hey, I'm a 20-year veteran out here. I read your book, The Last Christian. I loved it. I want to make a streaming series of it." Great, go for it. And so that's been the way everything has worked for me. And so years ago, I read a book called "Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow." Ooh. And I'm not sure that I think that that's a viable philosophy or strategy, but in my experience, I would amend that to do what you love, the impact will follow. All the impact that I've made has been by doing the things that I was passionate about doing, that my heart was fully into, and that I was good at doing. And when I focused on those things, then that has created real impact. Now, a lot of that impact has come through in totally unexpected ways, but it has created real impact in people's lives. And when I focused on things that I wasn't passionate about because I thought, well, I need to do this to sell more books or whatever, hadn't happened. And so, it's been a thrill to be able to impact people's lives. But I can honestly say, I had a role in that. I wrote the books, but boy, there was a lot more to it in getting it out and really impacting people. And I didn't have much to do with that, but that's not what I was good at. So it's been a long and a long road of learning through trial and error. Hey, these are the things that I should focus on, and these are the things that I shouldn't.
Great. So, so to both of you, right? So I'm just going to ask, how can you define success now? Because you guys have said so many lovely things, amazing, how you've impacted people and your level of reach, right? And your sales, right? So how would you define success now, especially in the role of a father, partner, leader, compared to earlier in your life?
To me, success is very much an individual definition. Because there's too many people out there, especially in my industry, in personal development, saying that success is, again, the Lamborghini, the yacht, the private jet, the mansion, and all these material things. Success for me is being able to lay my head on the pillow each night and knowing that I lived to my core values and to what I believe in my faith as well, that I lived as a good Christian today, but my core values: build the best relationships, create a vivid vision with everyone I work with, Commit kindness whenever possible. And be very fun to work with. That's one of the biggest ones. That's the one my clients love the most. If I do all that at the end of the day, and I look back on my day, just one day at a time, and say, I lived with these today. I was a good person today. I lived to the rules of my faith today. I stayed within my core values today. And I had fun doing it. To me, that's success. And if I stack up as many of those days as possible, that means those ripples are still going out, because every time I live within that and I create success for myself, I help to create success and a path to it for other people as well. So to me, that's my definition. It has nothing to do with a bank account and or material things, or the car you drive, or the clothes you wear. Even if you're matching your partner on Instagram, doesn't matter. Be a good human being every day, and that will help you to create success.
Yes. David, please.
I think that's a great definition of success. I would perhaps summarize all that is, to me, success is allowing Christ to express his own life through me. And to the degree that I am choosing to allow him to do that, and to be an expression of his love and his grace and his creativity to the world, and to people, that are close in my life, or people that I've never met, then my life is completely successful. I can't ask for anything more than to lay my head on the pillow and say, well, today I was letting Jesus live through me in a way that pleased him. And maybe that just involved going over and spending time with my elderly mother, spending some time with one of my kids, cleaning the kitchen after meals, could be really simple things, or it could be earth-shattering things. We never know in what ways expressing the love of God is going to manifest itself. And so, but to me, that's the important thing.
Oh, great. Oh, thank you, guys. So anyway, Steve, right? So in your experience, why do so many men struggle with clarity around their purpose, and how can vision board or daily mindset work change that?
Could you repeat that one more time? I apologize.
Okay, in your experience, why do so many men struggle with clarity around their purpose, and how can vision boards or daily mindset work change that?
There's a lot of people struggling in a lot of areas of their lives right now, because unfortunately, many people don't know what they want, and they don't know who the best version of themselves is. And like David said, for people that their faith is very important to them, they don't know how best to represent Christ or represent their spiritual teachings in their own lives, because we're so influenced by the media and social media by saying, this is what you need to do, this is the important thing, this is the right way, when people need to know that for themselves. So one of the biggest things that I suggest to people is grab a pen and paper, get rid of all things electronic, and write down, where is my life right now? Now, if you're a mathematical person, scale of 1 to 10. If you're a creative like myself, tell me a story about where your life is right now. And I work in 8 major areas, and I use a standard life wheel, because so many people are just thinking it's all about money, or it's all about prestige or power or whatever. I said, look, your physical health, your emotional well-being, your closest relationships, your core values that guide all of your thoughts, words, and actions, your faith, which is very similar, but the authority and power come from a higher place, your connection with people in a real way, which took a beating during the pandemic. How much isolation and depression and addiction did we have during those couple of years? And then your work and your money. Most people have never even thought to evaluate their lives in all 8 of those areas. And I say, once you do that, you tell me what you want that life to look like. You tell me how rewarding you want your existence to be. 1 year from now. You tell me what you can do to make each of those parts better, and you're going to very quickly understand by changing one of them, you change or you impact all of them. Most people have never even thought of it that way. They just look at their bank account and say, I need more money. They look at their emotions on a daily basis and say, I just want to be happier. They look at their physical body and say, well, I need to be healthier. But they haven't told themselves the actual story of today so that they can then design tomorrow. And that's the process that I take people through. And that's what I wish more people would understand.
Yeah. But do you think that there's a particular stage in life whereby you want to like say, okay, this time around, all I need is money, right? Another time you say, oh, all I need is family. All I need is friends. I don't know if.
Yeah. Good luck with that if that's all you think you need, because there are people out there chasing. A dear friend of mine, one of my mentors who passed away a few years ago, told me a very sad story about a friend of his who was incredibly successful in business, and he just worked and hustled and hustle and grind, had all the money in the world, bought himself a private jet, and every time he would fly in his private jet, he called everyone he knew to please come keep him company on the jet. He was the loneliest person because all he thought he needed was money, and that was going to answer all of his questions. And he said, Steve, he said he would fly around on his jet all by himself, feel just unhappy, multi-millionaire, because he neglected all those other parts of his life and thought it was just this one thing is going to get me through. There's a lot of people out there who are very unhappy because they put all their eggs into one basket that they were promised. You do this, you're set. You're going to be good. You're going to be happy. You're going to be successful. To me, it's not a balance. It's an integration of all those parts, and you get to determine the recipe. I love having all of them as part of my life, and they are all better now than they've ever been in my life.
Oh, great. So, I think so. This is still going to go to both of you. So, what is like what does a unique what does a father, a husband, a leader look like, right? And if there is like, what advice would you now give to somebody that is not at that standard, at the standard that you are trying to then what is the normal standard for a father, a husband or partner, right, and a leader, right? And if they don't meet that standard, what advice would you give to them?
Well, the first two things that come to mind for me is, number one, a good father is a man of integrity in all areas of his life, and to the degree that because that's something that is going to have a huge impact on his children and a huge impact on his marriage. For everybody in the family and for those surrounding him in his life to know, hey, this is a person of integrity. This is a person that can be trusted. This is a person that is predictable in a good sense. We know he will follow through. We know he will be there for us, and we can count on him. And so I think it comes across. People know when they're people of integrity. I mean, they know when they're living lives of integrity, and it shines through. They can't help but having it shine through. And the other thing that comes to mind is being a person of real love. And to me, that means in a family situation, having the attitude, hey, each of you is more important than me. I don't mean in a self-deprecating way or a I'm going to not do anything, not in any kind of a negative way, but simply, hey, if it's a choice between me watching the Stanley Cup Finals or me helping you with your homework because you really need some help tonight, guess what? I'm going to help you with your homework. That kind of thing. It's like, okay, my default mode is I am here for all of you, and I'm willing to serve you sacrificially. And I think that hugely impacts the lives of everyone in the family.
Yeah. And the partner and the leader?
Well, I think all of that goes hand in hand. People are drawn to people are drawn to others who are willing to be people of integrity and to serve sacrificially, and who have their best interests at heart. That's the real bottom line. It's like, I have your best interest at heart, and that's something that people intuit. They know when that's the case, and they respond, accordingly.
Yeah. Well, so what if they are kind of like, they seem to be demanding in terms, when you mentioned that sacrificing your games for your homework, right? What if it's something like it's gonna, like, it seems to be like demand is going to take a longer time to accomplish. Maybe, for example, in 24 hours a day, probably you spend like 20 hours. What would you like? Would you encourage that, or like in terms of the sacrifice? Would the sacrifice be like forever, kind of like, and you won't have time for your own self? I'm just saying, is it something like that?
I think the real issue is not. The real issue is what's best for the other person, and sometimes what's best for the other person is, what you need to do. You need to sit at the kitchen table and spend 2 hours hashing this out. Because you can figure it out, but you just haven't applied yourself well enough yet. That may be what's best for them. But in that case, I'm not deciding, well, I'm going to pretend that's what's best for them because I really want to do this instead. I'm going to do what's best for this person, and that's going to look different in according to each individual circumstance.
Yeah. That's it, please. Thank you.
I agree with everything David said, and he reminded me a lot of my dad, who took the time to teach me how to do stuff. He didn't just do it for me. He was patient. He was kind. If I made a mistake, he would let me make the mistake. And then he would say, well, okay, you kind of got it, but let me show you this. And the next time, try it this way. And that deals with, everything we did together. Carpentry. He taught me everything I know about carpentry. My homework, definitely I did not apply myself. I graduated college by 62 1,000ths of a point, which I always used to refer to on stage as graduating summa cum this close, which was my dad's favorite joke from when I did stand-up comedy for 7 years. He said, my son graduated summa cum this close. But he was so patient with everything, and he definitely lived with integrity. He walked his talk. And that's one thing I'll add, and this works as a father, as a husband, and as a leader. His father, my other grandfather, I mentioned the other grandfather earlier on my mom's side. My dad's father was an executive vice president for a national linen cleaning company. And in the middle of summer, now he had been in the industry his entire life. He started off in the dirtiest parts of the physical plant with the cleaning machines and soil rooms. Even as an executive vice president, he wouldn't park out front and go in the high glass tower. He would drive around back. He could walk through the lowest pay level of employees there, the people who were struggling. And he knew their names, and he greeted them, and he spoke to them like a person who cared. And in the middle of summer, when it was 130 degrees in there, if they were running behind, he would take off his jacket, take off his tie, unbutton his top button, roll up his sleeves. He would go down into the soil room, into the dregs of the physical plant. And he would work alongside these folks and help them to get their jobs done. And when he finally retired, many years ago, they gave him a plaque, and it was from the people at that level. He says, the gold watch didn't even enter the picture. He said, the respect that I earned from these people that I cared about because of the way I did my job as a leader. He said, that meant more to me than anything else. So I strive for that every day, to make everyone feel, not only to walk the talk, but to also be respectful and be able to relate to people who are at every level of a company. And we see all these CEOs palling around on the golf course. Well, guess what? Be in touch with people at every level of your company. You're going to be an amazing leader.
That's quite inspiring. Yeah, because it's people, except maybe you have phobia for different levels of people, because some people have phobia maybe for dealing with people at the managerial level, while some people have phobia for dealing with people at the lower level. But at the same time, would that make them be a good leader or not? Like if they are not able to meet, I know what you said is clear, that yes, it's important to be able to meet everybody at their point of their needs and at their level. But what if you are not able to do that? Will you still be a good leader?
I believe you can still be a leader, because it's not that you have to meet everybody, but it's when you do, how do you act? How do you treat these people? What energy do you put out? Because the ripples will go. And believe me, if you're a jerk, everyone's going to know about it. If you're a really good human being, everyone's going to know about it.
Yeah, sure. Sure. So, to both of you again, but so what is a what would a mother or a wife, a good wife, be? Or what is your ideal? Okay, yeah, that's right. What is your ideal wife or woman, right? And what is your ideal child?
Oh, those are difficult to answer. I think to me, an ideal spouse, whether it's husband or wife, is somebody that is truly committed to the well-being of another, as I was talking before, that lives with integrity and is empathetic and compassionate and forgiving. Because we all make so many mistakes. We all have blind spots. I just think that is so essential in any good relationship, but especially a marriage relationship, for both spouses to be that way toward one another. I mean, the Apostle Paul said, "Love covers a multitude of sins," and it's amazing how far that can go in a relationship. As far as children go, I know that as a parent, I was not the stricter one. I was the more lenient one. I'm not sure that was a great thing, but it had its real upside. I have a good relationship with all of my children at this point, and I think they as the years have as they've gotten a bit older, now they're in their late teens and early 20s. They seem to gravitate toward the graciousness, and so I think to me a really a good child is one that is willing to engage the parent on and essentially being a real human. It's like, okay, I want to interact with you on a basis of real love, real trust, real real honest communication. But ultimately that has to start with the parent. The parent is the one who sets the stage for that. And if the parent sets the stage for that, then it's amazing how willing children are to follow.
Yeah, I agree with everything there. I believe a perfect partner, a perfect spouse is one that they dovetail together so perfectly and complement each other. Complement with an I and complement with an E. Each other. And for the 3 years before my Tina and I crossed paths again and reconnected, which was just by an email out of the blue in June of 2007, 10 days after I wrote down, I am ready to fall in love, we knew instantly, because it turned out she had spent a couple of years working on herself too, the version that herself that she felt she needed to be in the ultimate relationship with her perfect partner, which coincidentally 1,350 miles away, still here in New Hampshire, I was doing the same. We instantly knew we were the perfect partners for each other. Anything that we had felt we were missing in past relationships or immature versions of ourselves was gone. And we got to be together for 17 and a half years. We continued to grow together that entire time. We continued to learn more about each other. And I believe that's an important part too in a partner and in a spouse, is to grow together, not just to have that initial electric reaction and think we're head over heels in love forever, because life steps in and we continue to grow together and learn each other, learning each other's love language. That's a super important thing in a relationship. You want to be a leader, you communicate the best of yourself and how you love to be communicated with, and you ask your partners to do the same. It's one thing to know each other's love language. Tina and I had the same ones. Little notes, little cards, little gestures. I couldn't walk past her without touching her in some way. Even just a hand on her shoulder, or touch her arm, or hold her hand. Cuddling and snuggling. Those were our love languages. And we both chose to speak them fluently. You want to be a leader in your relationship, you be the first person to be open and honest and vulnerable enough to communicate your love language to someone else. Now, I do not have children, so I cannot with authority speak on that. I do have a cat upstairs, which I recently adopted, who has had a very traumatic past 6 months, as have I, which is why I selected him. And together we are healing together. We're learning to communicate. He communicates right now in hissing anytime I get near him. But we're communicating, we're respecting each other's space, and we're learning a little bit more about each other every single day. So I hope to have a very healthy, happy cat who lives to old age. He's currently 5. And I hope that our relationship is one that heals both of our hearts and helps us to both become happier, more well-adjusted people.
Oh, great. Thank you. So, you mentioned vulnerability, right? So, is it ideal to kind of show vulnerability to only your spouse, or to only your children, or just the entire family? So, would your family know? Would you say it's ideal to let your family know about your vulnerability, or That is as a father or as a spouse? Or would you say it's only your partner that should know your vulnerability and it's only your children that should know your vulnerability?
Well, I think it's critical in a marriage to be vulnerable with each other, and to the degree that you aren't, then the relationship suffers. I mean, that's just the reality. And it's going to be frightening, and it's going to be painful at times, not only for you, but for the person, for your spouse. But that's the way you grow together, as Steve was saying about Ian and Tina. And so in regard to the children, I think that takes a lot of discernment. There are some things that are good to be vulnerable about, and some things that aren't. With my oldest son, when he was like maybe 17, we took a trip across state and did some things in Central Texas together. But really, the whole point of us taking the day-long trip together, and just a lot of driving around and doing a couple things in Austin and so forth, I just wanted some alone time with him so I could tell him my life story. And I was very vulnerable. But he was at a point in his life where I felt like he needs to hear this. And I really haven't done that to that degree with any of my other three children. And it's not because I'm necessarily intentionally withholding it from them. I wanted to share that with him because I felt like he would benefit from it substantially. And I think he did. And because of what he was going through at that time. So it takes discernment.
Steve.
Yep. I think back to the deepest conversations my dad and I had. We were always working on a car, doing a carpentry project, working in the yard together. We would just be doing stuff together. And of course, playing Kenny Rogers and oldies rock and roll and eating from a stale box of Cheez-Its, which seemed to be a constant whenever we were working. But the most open, authentic, and vulnerable conversations we ever had. And now I realize what a gift he was giving me all those years.
Yeah.
It was just so amazing that I learned so much more about him while he was teaching me stuff, and he would tell me stories of how he learned it.
Something that has to be done.
And I think back now, what an amazing authenticity that was for him, and even a vulnerability, because he would tell me, he'd say, okay, you just did this the first time, you did pretty good. Let me tell you about the first time I did it. And it was 10 times worse. He said, I cost myself a lot of money and a lot of heartache and a lot of, pain. But he was so real as a human being in those moments. So kind of like David felt that was the time for that particular one of his kids to have that conversation in that road trip. My dad and I had that. We would do work together. Mm-hmm. And that was the greatest. It was never just sitting in a chair looking at each other. It was always through him teaching me how to do something or do it better, and he would share his stories with me.
Right. I think, like, when it comes to bringing up our kids, really, so it will just feel like it's important to kind of only tell the children about their strength, right? And then let the partner know about the vulnerability, right? So that they will get more respect from their from the children, right? So, but I agree with the fact that yes, it really needs discernment, because you can't tell a young child what they're not meant to know. So it's important for you to kind of be applicable to them, so they'll be able to use them when required. But at the same time, some people think that it's important to tell their children as early as possible, so that they'll seem like the most intelligent children that knows about life, right? So I think everyone, there's a standard really that one needs to follow, which is Christ standard, and but at the same time, it's still good for them because people have family history and all those kind of things. But at the same time, it's good to have a standard, and I think families should just go with the standard. Proceed, right? You often say attitude, action, traction, right? How can fathers use those three to lead their homes or relationship better, starting this Father's Day?
Those are the three most basic steps for me. Is choosing the right attitude. Are you going to leave a plus sign trailing behind you or a minus sign? Are you going to build up or are you going to tear down? By the attitude that you choose to have with your partner, with your spouse, with your kids. Those are the three most basic steps for me. Is choosing the right attitude. Are you going to leave a plus sign trailing behind you or a minus sign? Are you going to build up or are you going to tear down? By the attitude that you choose to have with your partner, with your spouse, with your kids, etc. Now, so many people these days, they choose a bad attitude because there's a lot of anger going on in the world right now, and a lot of confusion, and a lot of fear, and a lot of frustration. And what we have to understand is this is younger, when it comes to the kids, this is a younger version of us. We're trying to prepare them for the world. So I think a lot of people need to keep in mind, they want to have a positive impact, even if they have to be stern. They don't have to cause damage. They don't have to cause harm with the conversations they have. So choosing the attitude better, even if you have to teach a lesson or discipline or call somebody to task. Choosing your attitude, doing it in such a positive way that shows, okay, what you did or what you're doing, don't just say it. It's not a good thing necessarily, but let's work through it and let me show how you can do this potentially even if somebody doesn't hear the words the next time to have a better outcome. So choosing your attitude going to every conversation and interaction is an important thing. Action is also another important thing. Don't just say it, do it in a positive way. Walk and traction. All that is. Be the living, breathing example for somebody to observe. Even if somebody doesn't hear the words you're saying, that somebody can observe you from the X amount of feet away and say, you see that person is living with integrity, that person is taking action, that person is doing something in a positive way. And traction, all that is taking any lesson you've learned, applying it and going somewhere else with it. And the example I use on stage is you see a burnout in a circle, when you see that like somebody who's doing a smoke show in a parking lot. And a lot of people do this. They go round and round in the same patterns every single day and they never change, but they also don't get action. They're using up their energy, they're wasting their resources, and they're not getting anywhere. They're not gaining anything. But when you see that little burnout and you see it going this way and there's no car, it means traction. Somebody took something they learned with the right attitude, they took action, and they went somewhere with it, with the knowledge in their pocket, so that they can have a better outcome every time they take action. Take the best actions and gain traction. So that's why those three things are very important: attitude, action, and traction in the way that I teach what I teach. Now it's on stage, off stage, backstage, standing on a street corner, or walking down the Captain Crunch aisle at the grocery store. I make sure I choose the best attitude, take the best actions, and gain traction.
I'm just going to ask David, and then we'll just wrap up. Right? So it's also like specifically to so you mentioned that the church often overlooks a vital part of Jesus' and person, right?
I'll just speak from my own experience.
We are missing most, and how can we begin to?
As long as I was trying to live the Christian life
in
my own strength,
in our homes, and
through my own
and
willpower,
as a father, really.
Well, I'll just speak from my own experience. As long as I was trying to live the Christian life, and it wasn't until in my own strength, realization, and through my own willpower, and then when I put my faith in Christ, that He came to live within me, I always
and that
felt
he lives in me
horribly
for the purpose
short.
of living his life through me,
And
he simply wants my availability and my trust.
and it
in him
wasn't
to be
until
doing
I
that.
came to the realization
And that may all
that
sound
God
like
Himself
semantics,
lives in me.
but to
And
me,
then when I put my
walking
faith
that
in
walk of
Christ,
faith
that He came to live within me,
versus me trying to
and
be
that He
like
lives in
Jesus
me for the purpose of living
through
His
my
life
own
through me,
efforts, as if that
and He
was
simply
possible,
wants my availability
which
and
is
my
not,
trust in Him to be doing
is like
that.
night and day.
And that may all
And
sound like
so
semantics,
my life went
but to me,
from
walking that
this
walk of faith
endless striving
versus
and
me
trying
trying
to
to
live
be
up
like
to and,
Jesus
failing
through my
and
own
feeling bad
efforts,
about
as if that
myself
was
and all of
possible,
this,
which is
to,
not,
hey, I'm just
is like
enjoying the
night and
reality
day.
that Jesus is the one who
And
lives
so
in me, and
my life
He is living
went
His life through
from
me, and I'm just trusting
this
Him to do
endless
that.
striving
And it's
and
just
trying to
amazing the
live up
peace and
to
the joy
and
and the genuine love for
you know
others that
failing and feeling
ended
bad
up
about
coming
myself
through
and all of
that
this
walk of
to
faith, as
hey,
opposed to a
I'm just
walk
enjoying
of
the reality that
striving.
Jesus is the one who lives in me and He is living His life through me, and I'm just trusting Him to do that.
Thank you
And it's
guys.
just
Thank
amazing the
you,
peace
David
and the
Gregory
joy and the genuine
Steve
love for others that
Damlin for
ended up
being
coming
part of
through
this
that
show.
walk of
But
faith
I'm
as
just
opposed
going
to
to
a walk
ask
of
you one
striving.
last thing for you, and then
Great,
yeah.
great.
So with regards to thank you guys, thank you David Gregory and Steve Damlin for being part of this show. But I'm just going to ask you one last thing for you, and then yeah.
For me, it would be
So
back
with
to the
regards
lesson that I learned from
to
observing one of my grandfathers. Leave as many
so
situations as you
what
can better than you
message
find them
would
in
you
some
like
way.
want
You'll
every
find
man or
that
father or
even if you
future
do
dad
it
to take
for
away from this
unselfish
conversation
reasons,
today?
the person who actually gains the most from it, for me, it would be back to the lesson that I learned from observing one of my grandfathers. Leave as many situations as you can better than you find them in some way. Just leaving you'll find that even if you do it in moments for unselfish better reasons, than you find them in some way. The person who actually gains the most from it, good way to go through life might just be you.
Awesome.
I think that's a good way to go through life, and it's a very
For me, it would be
Christ-like way to go
follow-up to
through
what I was
life,
just
to
talking
just be
about, which
walking
is if
through
God Himself has come to
just
live within
leaving
us,
situations and
then
people
we
in
have
moments
everything we need to live the
better
lives
than you
that
find
we
them
are
in some
intended
way.
to live,
I think that's
and
a
to be
really
the
good
people
way to
we
go
are
through
supposed
life.
to be. And so
Awesome.
we
Thank
can
you very much.
depend on
David
Him
Gregory?
to be leading.
For me, it would
be
be
a follow-up to what I was just talking about, which is if God Himself has come to live within us,
necessary to do that.
then we have everything we need to live the lives
you
that we
very,
are
very
intended
much.
to live
Thanks for your
and to
time.
be the people
right?
we are supposed
So,
to be.
Yeah.
And so we can
All right, baby.
depend
Hey,
on
it's been a
Him
pleasure,
to be
a delight.
leading us,
And
to
Steve, it's
be
been great
our
to spend time
strength,
with
to
you. I
be
thoroughly enjoyed it.
power within us
Absolutely.
that's necessary to do
You guys
that.
can connect.
Two new
Connect each
friends.
other up.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks for your time. Right?
All right,
So,
thanks so
yeah.
much.
Thank you.
All right, baby. Hey, it's been a pleasure, a delight. And Steve, it's been great to spend time with you. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
You guys can connect.
Two new
Connect each
friends.
other up.
Yeah.
All right, thank you
Yep.
very much. Yeah.
All right, thanks so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
I thank you guys. Thank you guys for listening. So David has been amazing and Steve has been amazing. And I believe you learned one or two things from them, right? To celebrate Father's Day, right? But I know that yes, your family in the name of Jesus, your family will be blessed in the name of Jesus. Your father will be a blessed father, right? A good father, right? And your children will be blessed as well, and they'll be good children in the name of Jesus, right? And yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being for listening. And I hope, well, our advice, I will request, I will plead that you should like, subscribe, right, and comment. And share as well, please, so that other people will feel will be blessed by this podcast. Right. Thank you so much. Take care. God bless you. Bye.